بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم یا ایہا الذین آمنوا اذکروا اللہ ذکرا کثیرا وسبحوہ بکرۃ واصیلا هو الذی یصلی علیکم وملائکتہ لیخرجکم من الظلمات الی النور وکان بالمؤمنین رحیما تحیتہم یوم یلقونہ سلام وعد لهم اجرا کریما یا ایہا النبی انا ارسلناک شاہدا ومبشرا ونذیرا وداعیا الی اللہ باذنہ وسراجا منیرا وبشر المؤمنین بان لهم من اللہ فضلا کبیرا ولا تطع الکافرین والمنافقین ودع اذاہم وتوکل علی اللہ وکفی باللہ وکیلا یا ایہا الذین آمنوا اذا نکحتم المؤمنات ثم طلقتموہن من قبل ان تمسوہن فما لکم علیہن من عدۃ تعتدونہا ومتعوہن وسرحوہن سراحا جمیلا یا ایہا النبی انا احللنا لک ازواجک اللاتی آتیت اجورہن وما ملکت یمینک مما افاء اللہ علیک وبنات عمک وبنات عماتک وبنات خالک وبنات خالاتک التی ہاجرن معک وامرأۃ مؤمنۃ ان وہبت نفسها للنبی ان اراد النبی ان یستنکحها خالصة لك من دون المؤمنین قد علمنا ما فرضنا علیہم فی ازواجہم وما ملکت ایمانہم لکی لا یکون علیک حرج وکان اللہ غفورا رحیما وکان اللہ غفورا رحیما ترجی من تشاء منہن وتؤوی الیک من تشاء ومن ابتغیت ممن عزلت فلا جناح علیک ذلک ادنی ان تقر اعینہن ولا یحزن ویرضین بما آتیتہن کلہن واللہ یعلم ما فی قلوبہم وکان اللہ علیما حلیما لا یحل لک النساء من بعد ولا ان تبدل بہن من ازواج ولو اعجبک حسنہن الا ما ملکت یمینک وکان اللہ علی کل شیء رقیب. اور پڑھوں گے مولانا صاحب؟ اور پڑھوں. یا ایہا الذین آمنوا لا تدخلوا بیوت النبی الا ان یؤذن لکم الی طعام غیر ناظرین اناہ ولکن اذا دعیتم فادخلوا فاذا طعمتم فانتشروا ولا مستانسین لحدیث ان ذلکم کان یؤذی النبی فیستحی منکم واللہ لا یستحی من الحق وَإِذَا سَأَلْتُمُوهُنَّ مَتَاعًا فَاسْأَلُوهُنَّ مِنْ وَرَاءِ حِجَابٍ ذَلِكُمْ أَطْهَرُ لِقُلُوبِكُمْ وَقُلُوبِهِنَّ وَمَا كَانَ لَكُمْ أَن تُؤْذُوا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ وَلَا أَن تَنكِحُوا أَزْوَاجَهُ مِنْ بَعْدِهِ أَبَدًا إِنَّ ذَلِكُمْ كَانَ عِندَ اللَّهِ عَظِيمًا ان تبدوا شیئا او تخفوه فإن اللہ کان بکل شیء علیم لا جناح عليهن في آبائهن ولا أبنائهن ولا إخوانهن ولا أبناء إخوانهن ولا أبناء أخواتهن ولا نسائهن ولا ما ملكت أيمانهن واتقين الله إن الله كان على كل شيء شهيدا إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد إن الذين يؤذون الله ورسوله لعنهم الله في الدنيا والآخرة وأعد لهم عذابا مهينا والذين يؤذون المؤمنين والمؤمنات بغير ما اكتسبوا فقد احتملوا بهتانا وإثما مبينا. You need this mic? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. Yeah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها النبي قل لأزواجك وبناتك ونساء المؤمنين يدنين عليهن من جلابيبهن ذلك أدنى أن يعرفن فلا يؤذين وكان الله غفورا رحيما. لئن لم ينته المنافقون والذين في قلوبهم مرض والمرجفون في المدينة لنغرينك بهم ثم لا يجاورونك فيها إلا قليلا ملعونين أينما تقفوا أخذوا وقتلوا تقتيلا سنة الله في الذين خلوا من قبل ولن تجد لسنة الله تبديلا يسألوك الناس عن الساعة قل إنما علمها عند الله وما يدريك لعل الساعة تكون قريبا إن الله لعن الكافرين وأعد لهم سعيرا خالدين فيها أبدا لا يجدون وليا ولا نصيرا يوم تقلب وجوههم في النار يقولون يا ليتنا أطعنا الله وأطعنا الرسول وقالوا ربنا إنا أطعنا سادتنا وكبراءنا فأذلونا سبيلا ربنا آتهم ضعفين من العذاب والعنهم لعنا كبيرا يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تكونوا كالذين آذوا موسى فبرأه الله مما قالوا وكان عند الله وجيها يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما إنا عرضنا الأمانة على السماوات والأرض والجبال فأبين أن يحملنها وأشفقن منها وحملها الإنسان إنه كان ظلوما جهولا ليعذب الله المنافقين والمنافقات والمشركين والمشركات ويتوب الله على المؤمنين والمؤمنات وكان الله غفورا رحيما. صدق الله العليم.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وله الحمد في الآخرة وهو الحكيم الخبير. يعلم ما يلج في الأرض وما يخرج منها وما ينزل من السماء وما يعرج فيها وهو الرحيم الغفور. وقال الذين كفروا لا تأتينا الساعة قل بلى وربي لتأتينكم عالم الغيب لا يعزب عنه مثقال ذرة في السماوات ولا في الأرض ولا أصغر من ذلك ولا أكبر إلا في كتاب مبين. ليجزي الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات أولئك لهم مغفرة ورزق كريم. والذين سعوا في آياتنا معاجزين أولئك لهم عذاب من رجز أليم. ويرى الذين أوتوا العلم الذي أنزل إليك من ربك هو الحق ويهدي إلى صراط العزيز الحميد. وقال الذين كفروا هل ندلكم على رجل ينبئكم إذا مزقتم كل ممزق إنكم لفي خلق جديد أفترى على الله كذبا أم به جنة بل الذين لا يؤمنون بالآخرة في العذاب والضلال البعيد. أفلم يروا إلى ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم من السماء والأرض إن نشأ نخسف بهم الأرض أو نسقط عليهم كسفا من السماء إن في ذلك لآية لكل عبد منيب. ولقد آتينا داود منا فضلا يا جبال أوبي معه والطير أنلنا له الحديد أن اعمل سابغات وقدر في السرد واعملوا صالحا إني بما تعملون بصير. ولسليمان الريح غدوها شهر ووراها شهر وأرسلنا له عين القطر. ومن الجن من يعمل بين يديه بإذن ربه ومن يزغ منهم عن أمرنا نزغه من عذاب السعير. يعملون له ما يشاء من محاريب وتماثيل وجفان كالجواب وقدور راسيات اعملوا آل داود شكرا وقليل من عبادي الشكور فلما قضينا عليه الموت ما دلهم على موته إلا دابة الأرض تأكل من سألته فلما خر تبينت الجن أن لو كانوا يعلمون الغيب ما لبثوا في العذاب المهين لقد كان لسبأ من مسكنهم آية جنتان عن يمين وشمال كلوا من رزق ربكم واشكروا له بلدة طيبة ورب غفور فعرضوا فأرسلنا عليهم سيع الأرم وبدلناهم جنتين ذوات أكل خمط وأثل وشيء من سدر قليل ذلك جزيناهم بما كفروا وهل نجازي إلا الكفور وجعلنا بينهم وبين القرى التي باركنا فيها قرى ظاهرة وقدرنا فيها السير سيروا فيها ليالي وأياما آمنين فقالوا ربنا باعد بين أسفارنا وظلموا أنفسهم فجعلناهم أحاديث ومزقناهم كل ممزق إن في ذلك لآية لكل صبار شكور ولقد صدق عليهم إبليس ظنه فاتبعوا إلا فريقا من المؤمنين وما كان له عليهم من سلطان إلا لنعلم من يؤمن بالآخرة ممن هو منها في شك وربك على كل شيء حفيظ صدق الله العلي العظيم.
أحسنت. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل ادعوا الذين زعمتم من دون الله لا يملكون مثقال ذرة في السماوات ولا في الأرض وما لهم فيهما من شرك وما له منهم من ظهير ولا تنفع الشفاعة عنده إلا لمن أذن له حتى إذا فزع عن قلوبهم قالوا ماذا قال ربكم قالوا الحق وهو العلي الكبير قل من يرزقكم من السماوات والأرض قل الله وإنا أو إياكم لعلى هدى أو في ضلال مبين قل لا تسألون عما أجرمنا ولا نسأل عما تعملون قل يجمع بيننا ربنا ثم يفتح بيننا بالحق وهو الفتاح العليم قل أروني الذين ألحقتم به شركاء كلا بل هو الله العزيز الحكيم وما أرسلناك إلا كافة للناس بشيرا ونذيرا ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين قل لكم ميعاد يوم لا تستأخرون عنه ساعة ولا تستقدمون وقال الذين كفروا لن نؤمن بهذا القرآن ولا بالذي بين يديه ولو ترى إذ الظالمون موقوفون عند ربهم يرجع بعضهم إلى بعض القول يقول الذين استضعفوا للذين استكبروا لولا أنتم لكنا مؤمنين قال الذين استكبروا للذين استضعفوا أنحن صددناكم عن الهدى بعد إذ جاءكم بل كنتم مجرمين وقال الذين استضعفوا للذين استكبروا بل مكر الليل والنهار إذ تأمروننا أن نكفر بالله ونجعل له أندادا وأسروا الندامة لما رأوا العذاب وجعلنا الأغلال في أعناق الذين كفروا هل يجزون إلا ما كانوا يعملون وما أرسلنا في قرية من نذير إلا قال مترفوها إنا بما أرسلتم به كافرون وقالوا نحن أكثر أموالا وأولادا وما نحن بمعذبين قل إن ربي يبسط الرزق لمن يشاء ويقدر ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون. يلا.
Sabah 36.
Okay, I'll read one more. وما أموالكم ولا أولادكم بالتي تقربكم عندنا زلفى إلا من آمن وعمل صالحا فأولئك لهم جزاء الضعف بما عملوا وهم في الغرفات آمنون والذين يسعون في آياتنا معاجزين أولئك في العذاب محضرون قل إن ربي يبسط الرزق لمن يشاء من عباده ويقدر له وما أنفقتم من شيء فهو يخلفه وهو خير الرازقين ويوم يحشرهم جميعا ثم يقول للملائكة أهؤلاء إياكم كانوا يعبدون قالوا سبحانك أنت ولينا من دونهم بل كانوا يعبدون الجن أكثرهم بهم مؤمنون فاليوم لا يملك بعضكم لبعض نفعا ولا ضرا ونقول للذين ظلموا ذوقوا عذاب النار التي كنتم بها تكذبون وإذا تتلى عليهم آياتنا بينات قالوا ما هذا إلا رجل يريد أن يصدكم عما كان يعبد آباؤكم وقالوا ما هذا إلا إفك مفترى وقال الذين كفروا للحق لما جاءهم إن هذا إلا سحر مبين وما آتيناهم من كتب يدرسونها وما أرسلنا إليهم قبلك من نذير وكذب الذين من قبلهم وما بلغوا معشار ما آتيناهم فكذبوا رسلي فكيف كان نكير صدق الله العلي العظيم.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل إنما أعظكم بواحدة أن تقوموا لله مثنى وفرادا ثم تتفكروا ما بصاحبكم من جنة إن هو إلا نذير لكم بين يدي عذاب شديد. قل ما سألتكم من أجر فهو لكم إن أجري إلا على الله وهو على كل شيء شهيد قل إن ربي يقذف بالحق علام الغيوب قل جاء الحق وما يبدئ الباطل وما يعيد قل إن زللت فإنما أزل على نفسي وإن اهتديت فبما يوحي إلي ربي إنه سميع قريب ولو ترى إذ فزعوا فلا فوت وأخذوا من مكان قريب وقالوا آمنا به وأنى لهم التناوش من مكان بعيد وقد كفروا به من قبل ويقذفون بالغيب من مكان بعيد وحيل بينهم وبين ما يشتهون كما فعل بأشيائهم من قبل إنه كان في شك مريب صدق الله العلي العظيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله فاطر السماوات والأرض جاعل الملائكة ورسلا أولي أجنحة مثنى وثلاث ورباع يزيد في الخلق ما يشاء إن الله على كل شيء قدير ما يفتح الله للناس من رحمة فلا ممسك لها وما يمسك فلا مرسل له من بعده وهو العزيز الحكيم. يا أيها الناس اذكروا نعمة الله عليكم هل من خالق غير الله يرزقكم من السماء والأرض لا إله إلا هو فأنى تؤفكون وإن يكذبوك فقد كذبت رسل من قبلك وإلى الله ترجع الأمور. يا أيها الناس إن وعد الله حق فلا تغرنكم الحياة الدنيا ولا يغرنكم بالله الغرور إن الشيطان لكم عدو فاتخذوه عدوا إنما يدعو حزبه ليكونوا من أصحاب السعير. الذين كفروا لهم عذاب شديد والذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات لهم مغفرة وأجر كبير. صدق الله.
I lost it when we were taking of my. Yeah, I have it. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. أفمن زين له سوء عمله فرآه حسنا فإن الله يزيد من يشاء أيهدي من يشاء فلا تذهب نفسك عليهم كثرت إن الله عليم بما يصنعون. والله الذي أرسل والله الذي أرسل فتشير سحابا فسقناه إلى بلد ميت فأحيينا به الأرض بعد موته كذلك النشور من كان يريد الإزالة فإله الإزالة جميعا إليه يسعد الكلم الطيب والأمان الصالح يرفعون والذين يمكرون السيئات لهم عذاب شديد ومكر أولئك هو يبور والله خلقكم من تراب ثم من نطفة ثم جعلكم أزواج وما تفيل إن أنشا ولا تزأ إلا بعلم وما يؤمر من ولا ينقص من أمور إلا في كتاب إن ذلك على الله يسير. صدق الله العظيم.
Ahsant. So we recited juz number 22nd from the Holy Quran. In this juz, of course, the surahs now start getting smaller and smaller. So you have 4 surahs that are in it. Beginning part is the remainder of Surah Ahzab, chapter 33. We've been doing the tafsir of Surah Ahzab, so I won't get into too much details of it. The entire Surah Sabah, and then entire Surah Fatir, and the beginning part of Surah Yasin, which we didn't get to. In the discussion on Surah Ahzab, the remaining part is towards the end, which talks about 7 ahkam particular to azwaj mutahharat of Rasulullah. One of them was not to speak in a tone which might make those whose hearts are already swerved further be muharrik and tahrik by it, meaning they would be aroused by listening to your delicate voice. So be careful not to be complacent in your voices. So that's, if you look at ayat number, the beginning part of the فَيَطْمَعُ الَّذِي, ayat number 32, talks about that. Then don't leave the houses unless it is really necessity for you. وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ in ayat number 33. Then in the time of Jahiliyyat, and the women, the way they used to decorate themselves, they are being stopped from doing so. And the way the women would go out exposing themselves back in the time of Jahiliyyah, that is being made forbidden. After all of that, that was something which was their culture of the ignorant era, which I will talk about in the Tafsir of Ahzab, which I am doing. They come to the discussion of Quran and namaz and all of that stuff. So there's a difference between, how culture plays that role, right? In Islam, there are different versions that people have of Islam. So the way Islam is practiced in Saudi Arabia is different than the Islam which is practiced in, for example, Pakistan or Iran or Iraq or other countries, for example. Yeah, so their own version of Islam that you find there. So that's not the discussion here. Discussion is what Islam suggested is not something which was only appropriate for that period of time, and it's no longer appropriate now. That which Islam suggested is appropriate for then people and even for people now. So it didn't say the hijab which Taliban suggest, that entire covering from top to bottom, you can't even tell who's inside, a man or a woman. Right? That's not what the hijab Islam asked for. Islam mentioned the hijab of women, that they can reveal their faces and they can reveal their hands. But everything else, must be covered. So that's enforcing it, of course, it's another story. Now, Iran does not impose the burqa, but imposes the covering of the head. That is something which is, normal in every in the core teachings of Islam. So don't go into what people used doing in different parts of the world. Here, the discussion is this is the standard that Islam has set. So after the basic discussion of revert from the types of things that were done in the time of Jahiliyyat, comes to the real thing. Pray, give zakat, and obey Prophet, and obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and recite the ayat of Quran. Then discusses the 10 sifat of Muslimin, in which you mention Muslimin, Muslimat, Mu'minin, Mu'minat, Qanitin, Qanitat, Sadiqin, Sadiqat, Sabirin, Sabirat, Khashi'in, Khashi'at, Mutasaddiqin, Mutasaddiqat, Sa'imin, Sa'imat, Hafizin, Hafizat, and Dakirin, Dakirat. 10 sifat of Mu'minin and Mu'minat are separately mentioned in ayat number 35. Then the ayat about sending salutation on Prophet, that ayat is ayat number, towards the end of it. So these ayat talk about, for example, ayat number 39, 40, and then moving forward, these are the ayat which talk about sending salutations on Prophet. Then we get to Surah Sabah. So I skipped purposely Surah Ahzab because I'll be discussing it. Ayat number 56 talks about sending salutations on the Prophet. In Surah Sabah, of course, Sabah is the queen of Sheba, and Bilqis, that was her name, and this surah is mentioned about those people. In this surah, there are two main discussions. First is the story of Hazrat Dawood and Hazrat Sulaiman, alayhi salatu wassalam. How Allah gave this fadl to Prophet Dawood in ayat number 10. He talks about it, that certainly we gave David our grace. O mountains and birds, chime with him, that he had this beautiful voice, and he was also capable of molding any type of iron or solid or steel. And then talks about the fadl that Allah did on Prophet Sulaiman in ayat number 12, that wali Sulaiman al-rih, that and for Sulaiman we subjected the wind, we made a fount of molten copper flow for him. So, these were some of the favors that were done to Hazrat Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam. Second discussion is the people of Sabah and their takabbur, their arrogance that they showed when Hazrat Sulaiman approached them regarding, bringing faith in one God and not worshiping the sun that you were doing. The arrogance that they showed and how Hazrat Sulaiman taught them a lesson. And of course, they came to fold of following Hazrat Sulaiman. Third is Surah Fatir that we recited. There are few discussions in Surah Fatir. First is the dalail and the evidences regarding Tawheed. In the very beginning, ayat number 5 and 6 talk about that indeed, Ya ayyuhan nas, inna wa'adallahi haq. The wa'da of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is true, it's haq. And don't let people deceive you, don't let shaitan deceive you. Shaitan is your enemy, consider him as your enemy. Don't consider him your friends. Ayat number 6 talks about that. Then it says all the honor and izzat belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you want izzat, associate yourself with Allah. If you want honor and dignity and integrity, there's no honor and integrity being away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The moment you're associated with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you have honor and you have dignity. There are three main groups of Muslimin that are discussed. Those Muslims who have done a lot of sins. Number 2, those whose goods and bad are equal. Their good deeds and their bad deeds are all in balance. And number 3, those whose righteous deeds are above than their sins. Fifth is the discussion about Lawh Mahfuz. Ayat number 11 talks about it. That how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, creation of insan is mentioned in it as well. That we created insan from dust, then from a drop of fluid, then we made him mates, and then on the discussion of how insan is born. Sixth discussion is about there won't be any type of grief in paradise. Ayat number 34 talks about that. They will say, all praise belong to Allah who has removed all grief from us. And that is when they're saying this, when they are in the heavens. And yes, further discussion regarding the heaven and some of its attributes that ayat number 35 talks about, that in it we are untouched by toil and untouched by fatigue. So there's no fatigue in paradise. There's no musibat in paradise. There's no parishani or difficulty in paradise. So not to contradict, you hear these nohas these days that if there's no majlis-e-shabbir in paradise, Jannat mein agar majlis-e-shabbir na hogi, hum ahle-aza khul se bezar rahenge, that we will not like to go to a Jannat where there's no majlis-e-shabbir. Well, Shabbir is himself there. And ayat of Quran is saying that there's no fatigue, there's no musibat, there's no masaib, there's nothing that will cause you pain. So therefore, none of that will be there. You will be able to meet and greet with Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wassalam. Sallallahu Muhammad wa alayhi. He set the camera. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين بالقاسم محمد اللهم وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وقرن في بيوتكن ولا تبرجن تبرج الجاهلية الأولى وأقمنا الصلاة وآتينا الزكاة وأطعنا الله ورسوله إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. The verse that I recited for tonight's discussion is continuing with the tafsir of Surah Ahzab. We've reached ayat number 33. Before the break and the majalis that we had discussed ayat number 32, which was addressing the wives of the Prophet, and there's a continuation, and the next few ayat will be addressing the wives of the Prophet as well. In this particular ayah, which is, there's a lot to discuss, and inshallah I'll be concise about it, that it says, stay in your houses and do not flaunt your finery like the former days of pagan of ignorance. Maintain the prayer and pay zakat and obey Allah and His apostle. Indeed, Allah desires to repel all impurity from you, O people of the household, and purify you with a thorough purification. Now in this verse, two important words are used initially. Before we get to the second part of the ayah, we realize that ayat tathir is not the beginning portion of the ayah. Ayat tathir is part of this bigger ayat, which is the second portion of it. The beginning part of the ayat is وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ, addressing the wives to remain in their houses, in their dwellings, and don't leave, and if you do so, don't flaunt your finery and exhibit your adornments and embellishment and zinat, basically. That's something which is being addressed over here. And then the second segment of the ayat says, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ. And we'll see how these two are separated. But in the first part of the ayah, there are two words that are used which must be understood for the proper understanding of its intention for being used. Number one, Allah uses the word tabarruj and Allah uses the word jahiliyyah. Now, tabarruj and jahiliyyah are used in this same ayat to exemplify something in particular, something that existed in the time of ignorant era, and the word jahiliyyah refers to that, and I'll get to that. So the word tabarruj, firstly, in Arabic means to become manifest or appear. When something does tabarruj, meaning it is obvious, it is simplified, it is clean, clear, and you can see it. It appears openly before others. The Arabs use the word baraja for conspicuous and elevated objects, something which was high above, they would use the word baraj. And similarly, you're getting to the words that you hear nowadays, burj, right? Or buruj is referred to the stars, but burj, Burj Khalifa, Burj Al Arab, and all of these burj, abraj is the plural of it. And even in, we have in Sindh, we have abraj as well. They use the same word, which means we use it for, places which are elevated. So these buildings, the skyscrapers are, because they're tall and they're can be seen from so far distance, right? So when you're driving, you can see Burj Al Arab from miles and miles away. In fact, you can even see it from, I've been told, that from Abu Dhabi. It's in Dubai, you can even see it from Abu Dhabi, I believe. That's such a far, long distance. Same thing, of course, you can't see the skyscrapers of New York from this part, but, as you move closer, maybe from 10 miles away, you can see the skyscrapers. And that's why they're called Burj, because it's visible from long distance. So a Burj is tower. It's also so called because of the prominence and elevation. A sailing boat is called barja, because sailing boat, it also has, you can see it from away, from far distance, as it sails and becomes visible from distance. The word tabarruj is derived from that same word burj or baraja. Now you understand the word baraja, you understand the word burj, which means, and it reflects to conspicuous and elevated places. Now look at the word tabarruj, which is being used in respect to a woman for three specific meanings. Number one, then that she should show the charms of her face and body before the people. Number one. Number two, that she should display the adornments of her dress and ornaments before others. And number three, that she should make herself conspicuous by her gait and figure, and of course, as she's in amongst the people. So basically, any means of showing and vanity and display is being used as tabarruj for women. That how many different ways women can display themselves. Either a woman who's covered but still is displaying, removal of the hair and the headscarf, and even further clothing. So these three are mentioned here in the riwayat. The same explanation of this word has been given by some leading lexicographers and the commentators, they mention, for example, tabarruj means to walk in vain, alluring and in a coquettish manner, that you're trying to draw attention. So when you walk in a way, you're trying to gain or to see, when sometimes kids stomp their feet, you tell someone, tell your children that you haven't made your bed yet, and you've said that a few times, and they're busy doing something else, and stomp their feet before they go. Why? They want to make their presence felt and sound, that they are annoyed that they're being made to do something which they don't want to do right now, for example. I'm sure everybody goes through that. Another place is mentioned, it means a woman displaying her necklace and her earrings. This is also in the meaning of that a woman should reveal her adornments when she should conceal it. That's also being mentioned. And that a woman should make herself conspicuous by display of her body and dress to attract the attention of opposite gender. So these are some of the practices of Zamane Jahiliyat. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used the word Jahiliyatil Ula. So you look at the context of revelation here. Allah says, وَقَرْنَا فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ وَلَا تَبَرَّجْنَا تَبَرُّجَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ الْأُولَى. Not just any Jahiliyat, the initial ignorant era, the first ignorant era. That means there's a second, that means there's another. So when there's first, there's got to be other that is being mentioned here. So Jahiliyyah has been used at 3 other places in Quran besides this place. In Al Imran 154, it says, وَطَائِفَةٌ قَدْ أَحَمَّتْهُمْ أَنفُسُهُمْ يَظُنُّونَ بِاللَّهِ غَيْرَ الْحَقِّ ظَنَّ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ. They began to cherish about Allah thoughts of ignorance, jahiliyyah, which were void of the truth. So they started assuming things for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala based on their jahili concepts. And Surah Ma'idah 50 says, أَفَحُكْمُ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ يَبْغُونَ وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ مِنَ اللَّهِ حُكْمًا لِقَوْمٍ يُوقِنُونَ. This was where about those who want to be judged by their own law instead of the law set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah sent this ayat by saying what? Do they desire to be judged by the laws of ignorance, jahiliyyat, when they have the laws created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Why would you want to be dealt with the laws of jahiliyyat? They were not fair. They were not providing equality. They were not fair by any means. The laws that Allah has created, of course, they are fair. In the third place in Surah Fath, ayat number 26 says, جَعَلَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا فِي قُلُوبِهِمُ الْحَمِيَّةِ حَمِيَّةَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ. Where the prejudice of the people of Makkah, due to which they did not permit the Muslims to perform the Umrah, has been called as the haughty spirit of paganism. They were conceited. They show this arrogance, and that arrogance was the arrogance of Jahiliyyat. So sometimes, these things are there for understanding that when we show similar traits and when we display similar attributes, these are the traces of these attributes go back to the time of Jahiliyyah. So this explanation makes it abundantly clear that what Allah forbids women is to move out of their houses showing off their physical charms and beauty. However, if they have to leave the house, and it's not like, Islam is saying you're bound, you're not allowed to leave the house. And that's not what is being said over here. If you must leave the house, and of course, in that time, women rarely left the house. They did not go outside. And hence, there was a reason why the difference between the witnesses, right? So 2 in front of 1. So if there's a witness regarding qatl or a murder, and you'll need 2 witnesses from the women as opposed to 1 witness from the men. And so, well, why this sort of this deficiency or distinction that is 1 man equal to 2 women? No, that's not what is being meant over here. When Allah says 2 men give witness and 4 women give witness, it's not lowering the status of the women saying, oh, no, 1 man equals to 2 women or 2 men equal to 4 women. That's not what is being mentioned over here. All are min dhakarin aw untha. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala considers them equal. But in this particular scenario, when they did not go outside the house, it will be very rare for a woman to be a witness to a murder or any of those sort of crimes that were happening at that time in the society. And if anyone was to witness something like that, because of her emotions, Allah is saying have someone else come along with her so that she can validate her argument. That is the reason, not to lower or degrade her. So over here it says, if you do have to leave the house, if you must leave the house, and there's a possibility that they have to leave the house, maybe go to the hospital, maybe go to educational institution, maybe go to work, maybe go to other places, they have to leave the house, and we're talking about at that time. Now it's a different story, different scenario, so don't plug and play the things from that time to today. But the laws are still the same, that even if you go outside, the restrictions are the same. What are those restrictions? That if you must leave the house for whatever it is that you have to, you should not be doing it in the same way women used to do in the pre-Islamic days or in the time of ignorance. For it does not behoove the women of a Muslim society to walk out fully embellished, to make their face and figure conspicuous and by adornments, by tight-fitting or transparent dresses, and to walk flirtatiously amongst na-mahram. This is something which is still not allowed. Going out back then must have been a specific rule. It was rarity for them to go out. Now that is not the case. They go out, but the concept of how should you go out, it still remains the same. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Quran, and I recited this ayat the other day as well, that وَلَا تَمُوتُنَّ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. That don't die until you are Muslim. So we don't control our death. Do we control our death? No. Allah decides when death will come upon me. So yes. You don't control your death, but you do control how you die. Meaning what? In what state? Leaving this dunya in the state of iman, or leaving this dunya in the state of kufr, that's in your control. But when you leave, that is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Same thing is being said over here. Back in the day, women didn't go out. Today they do go out. But that which doesn't change is how they go out. That still remains the key, as this ayat is mentioning. So these are the ways of ignorance which Islam does not approve. So Jahiliyatul Ula, coming to that discussion, where there would be Jahiliyatul Ukhra. So Ula as opposed to Ukhra. So you say Ulul Amr, or you say Ula, the first, the initial, and Ukhra is the Akhir, latter. So you have Awwal wa Akhir, you have Awwal wa Thani, and then you have Ula wa Ukhra. So this is how you have, in Arabic, when you're trying to come up with the feminine for Awwal, you got Ula, Akhir, you have Ukhra, or for example, Asghar, you have Sughra, Akbar, you have Kubra, Azam, you have Udma. This is how you make the feminine for the masculine. So Jahiliyatul Ula means there would be Jahiliyatul Ukhra that we can witness today. Hadith says, Satakunul Jahiliyatul Ukhra. Soon there will be another ignorance. And I don't need to explain what ignorance this is being mentioned, that if they used to bury daughters alive in the first Jahiliyyah, right? بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ. That if a man was told that the daughter is born, يَدُسُّهُ فِي التُّرَابِ, he would put his head down and he said, what should I do? Should I bury her alive, or should I face the dishonor walking around the people? That's how they used to think. How do you think? This is not a sound means of thinking. So in the time of Jahiliyyah, they used to bury their daughters alive. This is a common knowledge. Everybody knows that. Today, Jahiliyatul Ukhra is when the abortion, they destroy both males and females. If there was murder and manslaughter in Jahiliyyah that day, and they didn't take any, it wasn't difficult for them to go out and do so. Today, millions of people are killed, and major wars, even one push of button goes ahead and kills hundreds and thousands. So in the time of Jahiliyyah, there didn't exist schools and institutions for teachings, and crimes were committed. Today, despite existence of thousands of schools and universities, the most important human rights are violated. That was Jahiliyatul Ula. This is Jahiliyatul Ukhra, the first ignorant era, and we're living in the second. In the time of Jahiliyyah, corruption, adultery were crimes, but today, you go a step further, that these things are no longer looked at as crime, and you add on to it other types of crimes as well. And then the last part of the ayah, which is yutahhirakum tathira, that is the second portion of the ayat. So, common question, and I'm sure it has been addressed before, but begs to be repeated. if the ayat initially talks about the wives of the Prophet, why are we excluding them from yutahhirakum tathira? Why are we saying that this part of the ayat is only about Ahlul Bayt and the wives are not included? No, we have the hadith for that. But how do you prove that? Number one, this verse wasn't revealed all at once. The beginning part, وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ إِلَىٰ وَأَطَعْنَ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ was revealed first, separately, and then إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ that was revealed separately. When Quran was being put together, Rasulullah put these ayat together for a particular reason. But these two ayat were not revealed together. So you look at that ayat number 33, it starts from وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ talking about the wives, ends with يُطَهِّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. So let's include the wives in the taharat as well. No, that's not the case. These two were separately revealed for separate occasions, put together for a particular reason, which I'll mention inshallah in a minute. Number two, according to Tafsir Majmul Bayan, the custom of eloquent poets of Arabs, writers, is that they introduce new and important words in front of common topics so that their impact is greater. For example, today, someone who's reading the news, a newscaster on major news channels, ABC, Fox, and whatnot, CNN, when they're reading the news and then say, hold on, we're just receiving some breaking news. What happens? You weren't paying attention to the news. The moment the guy says, we just received this, there's some breaking news, now you're all tuned in. And then he'll go ahead and give you that news. So the impact of him saying, receiving the breaking news right now creates this psychological shock, and it's good for advertising as well. They got the attention. So similar is the case with this ayat. وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ wives are addressed, got the attention. إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ the later part of the ayat then was put next to it. Similarly, in ayat number 3 of Ma'idah, which is about the wilayat and the imamat, completion of deen, اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم الإسلام دينا اليوم يئس الذين كفروا من دينكم. Today is the day when kuffar are mayus and in despair. All of these things are mentioned. Wilayat is mentioned, imamat is mentioned, completion of deen is mentioned, perfection of the favors is mentioned, despair of unbelievers is mentioned, satisfaction of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of these things are mentioned. But this ayat begins with what? Begins with the ahkam related to eating and not eating that meat which is haram for you. You can't have pig, you can't have carcass, you can't have flesh, you can't have blood, you can't eat that which upon Allah's name is not recited. All of these are excluded. Now what does that have to do with the wilayat and the imamat and the completion of the deen and the completion of the favors and all of these other things? No relationship whatsoever. That's what happened. These ayat of wilayat and ayat of tathir has to be protected. Therefore, they were put in a way that nobody will do tahrif of these ayat. And lastly, for Ahlul Bayt, masculine plural is being used. Ankum, which shows majority in Ahlul Bayt were men. 4 of them were men. 1 of them was Janab Sayyida, as opposed to the sentence before and after where pronouns are all feminine. Buyutikunna, aqimna, atina, waqarna. All of these are feminine pronouns that are being used. And then when it comes to Ahlul Bayt, it says, Ankumur rijsa Ahlul Bayt, yutahhirakum tathira. So all the kum, sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So the masculine pronoun is being used. If I say, of course in English, you don't really address when you're speaking to crowd in front of you, that all of you, you will be same for women and for men. But if, being referred to as the third person, he or she will be able to differentiate between the two. When you have majority of one gender and minority of another gender, when you're trying to address all of them in Arabic, you use that gender which is in majority. Definitely, Ahlul Bayt will not be in majority. There will be more of the wives than the Ahlul Bayt. But Allah uses the masculine sigha in order to tell us that majority were men in that, and there was one woman which was in minority. Hence, it reflects that there were only those 5 upon whom this ayat al-tathir was revealed. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah rabbil alameen.
Assalamu alaikum. So we've resumed back to our normal daily schedule. We start the program at 6:30 p.m. with recitation of the Holy Quran, followed by Maulana Saab's speech at around 7 p.m. And then we break for Maghrib namaz and iftar. And then we'll return back to the masjid at around 8:45 p.m. for namaz isha. And then the daily program concludes with dua iftitah. Of course, tonight we're going to be commemorating the night of Shab Qadr, the night of power, the night of destiny. This is a night that we wait the whole year for. Inshallah, that night has arrived. So we'll have the Amal program that will start after the iftar. And the masjid will be open the entire night for the Amal and the prayers. And the program will conclude at the time of Fajr Salat. There's also been an arrangement for Sari after the Amal program. So we hope that you'll be able to join us tonight to commemorate this high holy night. The children's Al-Mehdi workshops are also resuming this weekend, so we'll resume again tomorrow night, Friday night. This will be the last set of workshops for the holy month of Ramadan, as this will be the last weekend of the holy month. So the workshops will start at 6:45 p.m. on both Friday and Saturday, and they'll run up until the time of Maghrib namaz. The workshops are open to children up to the age of 11. There's no registration that's required, so please consider bringing your children if you haven't brought them already. It's a wonderful educational experience. The kids get to bond together, and the volunteers work very hard to prepare for that. So please take advantage of these last two workshops. Also, the Itiqaf program will take place starting tomorrow, April 14th, and will run through April 16th. The sponsors for tonight's program are Dr. Iqbal and Dr. Abida Jafri, Dr. Mustafa Jafri, Dr. Abid Rizvi and Dr. Elia Jafri, Mr. Kazim Hussain Jafri and Fizza Jafri, Mr. Firas and Mrs. Nusrat Hamade, Dr. Shaida Ahmad and Zain Ahmad, Muzaffar Muhammad and Toria Abdul Hamid, Mr. and Mrs. Shahid Hamdani, Dr. Zagham Abbas Baloch, Dr. Mubashir Abbas and Jalila Jafri, as well as Dr. Shujat Ali and Ifat Jafri. And the sponsor for the morning sari is Mr. Riyad Hussain and family. Kindly recite Surah Fatiha for the marhumin of the sponsors, as well as for all of our marhumin, and for those who have no one to recite Fatiha for them. There's also a special request for Fatiha for Syed Abdul Rasul Al-Hillo, his sons Asghar Ali Saleh and Muhammad Jawad, as well as for marhum Abdul Nabi Zebak. Surah Fatiha. Sponsorship opportunities for the nightly iftar program remain available for the last week of the holy month of Ramadan. If anyone's interested in taking advantage of this opportunity to earn the sawab of opening the roza, please reach out to Brother Shariar Heather, Brother Mustafa Kareem, or myself after the program. We can give you more information. There are those in our community tonight who are not feeling well, many across the world who are suffering from various hardships, including war in different places around the world, hunger, religious persecution, natural disasters. Let us pray to Allah during these blessed nights, especially on the night of Qadr, to relieve the suffering of these people. Kindly recite with me verse number 62 of Surah Amal 5 times. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Amma yujibul mustara izada wa yakshifu su. 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 Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. a few housekeeping announcements, just reminders that to maintain the sanctity of the masjid, we've set up separate entrance for the ladies on the side. So we ask the sisters to please utilize that entrance when you enter and when you exit the masjid. You've also noticed that we have increased security presence at the masjid, especially during the last week as the crowds have gotten larger. So we have security present on the outside of the masjid as well as at the different entry points of the masjid. Also, in light of recent current events, we've decided to increase security inside the namaz hall as well, especially during the time of the Jamaat prayer. So you'll notice that we'll have extra security at the mihrab as a protection for Maulana as well as for all of the congregation. And we remind everybody that the safety of the masjid is really a collective responsibility. So again, be on the lookout if you see anything unusual, anything suspicious, somebody behaving suspiciously, or any package that's left unattended. Speak up. Please reach out to the volunteers or any of the security team members that are present with us during the program. Just a word about the children. The safety and the security of the children is of utmost importance to us here at the masjid. So we respectfully remind all parents to please keep the children with you throughout the duration of the program, and please know their whereabouts at all times. We've had some incidents where children have been running in the parking lot, especially when it's gotten dark outside while cars have been pulling in and out. So this can be dangerous. So please, parents, keep the children with you at all times. And really, let's make it a rule to have the children inside the masjid during the program so that they can benefit from the program that's going on as well. We also respectfully remind everyone to please cooperate with the volunteers during the parking, as well as during the service of the iftari and the cleaning up after the program. Also, just another reminder to please be careful not to park in the yellow fire lanes. Remember, those lanes have to be left open for the emergency vehicles should the need for that become necessary. So please be mindful of that. We still have a few more minutes before Azan, so just a couple more announcements. Who is Hussein is organizing an Eid toy drive. This toy drive will benefit the Children's Hospital at Robert Wood Johnson here in New Brunswick. So toys are being collected for the children who are at the hospital. You can bring a new toy to the masjid for drop-off. There's a box that's available out in the foyer. We ask that you not have any packages sent here to the masjid. We'll only be accepting boxes when you come in person to the program. Also, a reminder that the protest against the destruction of Jannatul Baqi will take place as it does every year. This year it'll be Friday, April 28th. It'll take place at the Saudi Embassy in Washington, D.C. So this is an important protest, so we hope that you'll make time to attend that protest. There are arrangements for a bus to be scheduled to depart from the masjid for that protest. So please note that date and make every effort to attend that protest. And then finally, Anjuman Naujawan an Ali Akbar is organizing a ziyarat giveaway. You can register for this online on the website www.njaliakbar.com. There's no purchase that's required for registration. The drawing for this ziyarat will take place on the day of Eid. So the lucky winner plus a guest of his or her choice will receive an all expenses paid trip to Iraq for ziyarat to the holy places. So please register for that online. And if anyone wants to donate towards that giveaway, you can do that as well on the website. I'll conclude here. We have a minute before Azan, so please prepare for the salawat.
سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر ولله الحمد. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن عليًا ولي الله. أشهد أن عليًا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله. وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله وسلم.
اللهم صل. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن عليا ولي الله. أشهد أن عليا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة.